Now, did you know that mosquitoes cause over 1 million deaths annually? With rising demand for essential services, smart entrepreneurs are leveraging recession-resistant, reoccurring revenue models to scale even faster. So enter Mosquito Squad, the industry's largest franchise with 500% growth. And today we've got Jason Henshaw. He's the franchise development manager for a couple different brands, and we're going to explore about that today. So if you're ready to accelerate your growth, you're here for the right reason.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Hey, Jason. Welcome to Fordify Live. We're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. But before we dive into the business strategies of today's episode, what originally drew you to the franchise world and what excites you most about helping entrepreneurs succeed?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for having me, Ford. So I think everybody's got a franchise story. If you're in franchising, whether you're an owner or you're in development or any way involved in franchising. And so they're all unique, right, to the person. And I think mine is unique in the way that, I didn't just wake up and say, I want to be in franchising one day or go to school for it or anything like that. I don't think there is really much schooling for it or anything like that. So I bought into a franchise. I own my own business, was doing that for many years, had a friend of mine start a brand, and they introduced me to the brand. And, I was franchise number 6. I put all my chips in, Ford. I was young enough that if I failed, I'll get a second chance at least, right? So I put all my chips in, cashed out my 401k, bought into the business. They actually brought me on board to headquarters, the corporate, because they were sending people to me for validation. And I was closing deals. They were going back and signing after they spoke to me. And I wasn't doing anything different. I was just being myself and giving them the information about what my experience was with the franchise. And they said, why don't you come do that for us full time? So I've never looked back. I've been doing it for about 15 years now. I've been on all sides. Like I said, I've been an owner. And I think that gives me some unique perspective, right? Because I'm able to kind of empathize or have a sympathetic approach with what it's like to kind of be on that precipice of deciding whether or not you want to buy into a brand and maybe push all your chips in, right, to become an owner. So, that absolutely gives me some kind of advantage when I'm communicating with potential candidates. I strongly believe, and I think you probably believe this as well, and maybe others in franchising, that franchising is the greatest invention for small business ever created. Right, just bar none. The data backs that up, right?
Wait, for everybody listening, this is a live show. Let's try this again. That's the sound effect we were going for. So yes, franchising is the greatest business. Keep going.
Yeah, and there's data that backs that up, right? And these are probably just numbers that you've heard regurgitated over and over again. But most small businesses fail in their first 5 years, like 85% failure rate, really high failure rate. Franchising, it's the other way around. 15% fail, which is very small comparatively, and 85% success rate, right? So with that kind of data, that kind of track record, I sleep really well at night knowing that whoever I bring into either one of my brands, that they're buying into a business that the chance of success is a lot higher than if they were going to kind of try and do it like on their own.
That makes great sense. So for those of you listening to the audio version, which is the Business Growth Show podcast, it's Jason Henshaw, and he's franchise development manager for a couple different brands of Authority Brands, which is a parent company, but it's mosquitosquadfranchise.com or monstertreeservice.com. All right, so getting back to when you're developing and looking for new entrepreneurs, what do you see some of the challenges facing entrepreneurs, either new franchisees or entrepreneurs this year, with the landscape the way it is now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of franchise opportunities out there. There's so many different categories. I'm thankful that I've been in franchising for a while. I've worked in all different types of categories, but I really strongly believe that home service is the top, right? That's if you're going to choose a category of franchise to get involved with, this is the one that you want to be involved with, because during COVID, we actually saw a surge in home service franchises and people investing in that, because those brick and mortar retail businesses, those restaurants and stuff like that, we know what happened to them, right? During those, and same thing in recessions, right? Going out to eat is not a necessity, right? So, but home service is, right? You need that that washing machine fixed. You need that roof repaired, right? You need that tree taken off your house that fell in the storm, right? So these are things that are recession and pandemic resistant. And, the current talk right now is AI, right? Is AI going to take my job, right? And so right now, I don't know of any pest control or tree trimming services that can be done by AI or robots. Hopefully that never happens, because that's a scary proposition, a robot with a chainsaw. But I love it. But that's the advantage, right? You're buying into something that's got that tech resistance, that recession, pandemic resistance, and it's a need. It's not just a want.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, when I look at success in franchising, you always want, or in business, you want someone passionate about whatever the product or service is. And then you want them to develop their skills in operational and leadership and financial management. And then, of course, marketing and sales. And, franchisors want the franchisees to follow their systems, and franchisees want the franchisor to drive more business. So it really comes down to the franchisee taking personal accountability for their own success and actually growing their centers of influence in the area. I know that, when I go in as a franchise keynote speaker, and I'm actually speaking for the Authority Brands conference coming up here, which is going to have like 2,000 people. So it's going to have like all 14 brands there. So I'm glad to have a couple of them on the show today. That's always good. And they're all in home services. And when I look at those and I do my pre-event questionnaires, I find the top producers and I find those that may be detractors, some may be people that are struggling. And it's interesting when I send out the surveys, because when I get the survey responses back, I don't always know which category they fall into when the brands send me the list. Because I say, give me 10 good, 10 that are maybe struggling. But I can always tell when I get the answers back, because it comes down to their mindset and the way they view and the things that they're taking. You can just tell by the way they answer the questions whether they're looking external for external reasons or whether they're looking internal. Now, certainly there's increased competition and supply chain issues and staffing issues and all the other things that any business deals with. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of opportunity. And I always think that there's no such thing as a money problem. There's only an idea problem. If you want to earn more money, add more value. So when you look at new franchisees, prospects that are interested in either one of your brands, what traits are you looking for? And what red flags do you have that kind of let you say, maybe this isn't a good fit?
Yeah, great question. And before I answer that, you talked about passion for the brand, right? Yeah. So I'm reading this book right now called The Human Sales Factor by Lance Tyson. And in that book, there's something that I learned, right? You learn something new. You should be learning something new every day. Otherwise, you're kind of spinning your wheels. And so in that book, it says enthusiasm is important in sales. And it had an acronym, right? The end of enthusiasm is IASM, right? Enthusiasm. And so the acronym stands for I am sold myself, right? That means I have so much passion and belief in this brand that I am sold myself, right? I would buy one of these things. And so you need to have that, right? So I just wanted to kind of point that out because it reminded me of something I just read. But what we're looking for in an owner is someone that's going to be active in their business. There's really three key factors. And this goes for any franchise business, whether it's us or anybody. I believe that you need to be active in your business. There is no silver magic bullet that you sign on the dotted line, pay your franchise fee, and check's going to come in the mail, right? That does not exist. And if it does, let me know because I'll sign up for that franchise, right?
That's right.
But run the other way if they tell you that's how it works. You got to be actively. It's still a business that you own, right? 90% of the success of the business is on you, right? We're providing you all the support and resources and experience that come with a good franchisor, but you've got to be actively involved in business. The other factor that I would think is very important for any person involved is following the process, right? That's what you paid for. Like you bought into the system because of all the processes that they have. Because at the end of the day, the reason why franchising works is you're jumping the line, right? You're not coming in at the beginning, right? Like if you went and started a business on your own and making all those rookie mistakes that you would make, you're skipping all that. You're skipping the franchisor's already figured all that out. So you can kind of just jump in and get right to it and start making money, right? So those are some of the things I would add. And then last thing I would say is data. Pay attention to the data. right? Like we have great software, good franchisor. To me, this is table stakes, right? If you buy into a great franchise system, if they don't have the tools, systems, and software, again, run the other way, right? So I'm not kind of telling you something that's unique with any of my brands. It's just what you should have. And so pay attention to that. We invested a lot of money into that software and into that data gathering. Utilize it to make educated decisions on your business. Don't just go from your gut or your emotion or your feeling. Base it on hard, cold facts.
Yeah, data-driven decision-making is a key point. I mean, sometimes, as an entrepreneur myself, I've had 17 different companies, 3 were 8 figures. And so I've had a lot of successes. I never went bankrupt, but I've certainly, shut some businesses down that the model didn't work. But I've learned along the way that, you can either learn from your experience or other people's experience. And so, you're going to learn a lot easier from other people's experience. And when you join a franchise, they've already made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. So it really shortens the learning curve, like you said, jumps the line and brings them to success. The scariest people for me when I've worked on, because I work as a strategic consultant with business development managers like you to help you sell more franchises. So when I speak at a brand, sometimes they'll hire me to come in and help with business development to help them prospect. The cost to acquire leads always an issue and things like that. And, they always ask me, like, what are some of the red flags that I've seen? And the red flags I've seen are the ones that are trying to convince me that they're going to be the top success in the organization, or because they were successful in a corporate job, they think it's just transferable skills. And I'm always cautioned. I mean, to me, a new broom sweeps clean. When I was 12 years old, I lived in the projects of North Minneapolis, and I went to work for Milt's grocery store. Said I was 16, I was 12. Okay, sorry. But I was bagging groceries, and I was stocking the shelves, and I was working produce, and I really wanted to be the cashier, just because I thought it'd be really cool to work with the old cash registers and everything. So never got any attention from the boss, Mr. Milt. And finally one day he's walking down the aisle, and he's kind of a big, scary guy. So I stopped him and I said, "Hey, Milt, how am I doing?" And he said, "Come back and ask me in 6 months. A new broom sweeps clean." Now, I didn't know what that meant. I just started frustrated, kind of almost crying, like, "Oh, well, I wanted my instant gratification." Right. And it wasn't until I had my first business and I started to hire employees who would tell me how great they were when I hired them. And about 90 days in is when I really got to see whether or not, sometimes you could tell immediately, but if they made it through the interview process, usually 3 months to 6 months is when I really was able to measure to whether or not they were really producing. And again, it's not what they say, it's what you do, and it's not what you know, it's how well you execute, right? So I don't know about you when you're interviewing new prospects, what red flags you've had.
Yeah, so you bring a great point, particularly when it's related to home services, right? A majority of the people that we're talking to that come in and are interested in this brand, let me give Monster Tree as an example. It's very expensive. If you ever seen tree work done, that equipment is not cheap, lifts and big trucks and et cetera. So our investment is on the high side, right? It kind of is what it is. And it's kind of, like I said, poker stakes. If you want to be in this business and perform at a high level, that's what's required to be able to be in the tree business. And so 9 times out of 10, who I'm talking to is a corporate refugee, right? C-level, former business owner or very close to business ownership. So, I'm talking to very highly educated, sophisticated people with a lot of business acumen. And so they feel, like you said, they can come into this and just kind of rework it and do it their way because they've done this before, right? And this is a completely, this is a completely different situation because they're not dealing in a corporate environment with cubicles and people on computers. These are guys that are climbing trees. These are roughnecks, right, that are working outside. This is a blue collar workforce, salt of the earth type people. And you have to communicate with them differently, right? You're not going to talk to them about spreadsheets or data or PowerPoint presentations, right? They're not going to understand that, right? You need to talk to them the way that they understand. And so a big part of our training, particularly with this brand, and I think with all home service brands, is helping them overcome that preconception that they can kind of transfer. Some of the skills are transferable, right? I mean, that's why franchise organizations have things like FACs, right? Franchise advisory councils, because we know that our greatest resources are our franchisees, right? These are people that they weren't born in a vacuum, right? They had previous lives before becoming a franchisee that they can bring to the table, whether it's business or banking or marketing or whatever the case may be. And we want to tap into that, right? But as far as the model, right, in the process and the way that we do business, we want them to rely on us for that. We affectionately call them cowboys, right? Folks that come into a business model and think they're just going to kind of reinvent it. Maybe never owned a business before, and definitely never owned a tree care or pest control business, and think they're just going to radically revolutionize it because they just kind of know better.
Well, I know one of the things that made you guys have such tremendous growth is you also listen to your franchisees, not just through the Franchise Advisory Council, but, innovation comes from your franchisees. Now, in franchising, innovation is one of those scary words because, you have a system and you should follow the system. I mean, I've done a lot of episodes on Fordify Live. Just was on a CEO with a brand that has 9 different brands, and we were talking about innovation. He said, look, we get innovation from our team, and sometimes the ideas are great and sometimes the ideas aren't. And he was telling me a story about how when he was helping GNC grow, and he helped grow that model, huge. And one of the franchisees wanted to sell lottery tickets inside GNC because he knew he would make a lot of money. And corporate was like, no, you can't send. And he was like, well, can I have an exception? Can I just sell lottery tickets in my, because I'm getting so much traffic and I want to sell lottery tickets. And he said no. And when the guy asked him why, he said, look, if I allow you to sell lottery tickets and someone comes in this GNC and buys them, they're going to go into a GNC in another area and they're not going to have lottery tickets, and then it's going to reflect badly on the brand. And that was just the answer. But the real core of it is, stay in your lane of what you are best at. There's nothing wrong with feedback loops and coming up with ideas and sharing them. So as a franchisee, you should absolutely share your ideas with corporate, but don't go rogue and don't get your feelings hurt, because chances are they've probably heard that idea 300 times. I mean, I'm 63 years old. I've been growing businesses since I was 15 years old. I've spoke to literally thousands of businesses, hundreds of franchise brands, thousands of franchise brands, if not millions. And what I've learned is, you've got to be open-minded and coachable, and you got to be a critical thinker. You've got to be able to determine if it's a good reason and what's the reason behind it. And it's just like even me, I run a digital marketing agency, which we do, done a few marketing. And I'll go meet with their executive team and they'll tell me how they sell and what they do. And they'll say, well, pay-per-click didn't work, or direct mail didn't work, or trade shows didn't work, or referral marketing didn't work. And I always tell them, look, it's not the method. It's the combination of the right message to the right market using the right method. Every method works. They all work.
Right.
It's just some are going to work more effectively than others. So what do you think about that? And I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I 100% agree, right? So I learned from a gentleman, I don't know if you ever met him, his name's Ben L'Italian, and he's been in franchising a long time. He taught at George Washington University, Georgetown University about franchising, and I attended this course. And so in there, he made it very simple to understand. The highest goal of a franchisor is to protect the brand at all costs, right? And they do this not just for themselves, right? It's their baby, they created it. Of course, that's one of the reasons, but also for the other owners, right? Because at the end of the day, if something goes sideways, right, they get in the news somehow for a bad reason. The headline's not going to say franchisee owner of this particular of GNC made this thing happen. It's just going to say GNC, right? And that affects everybody, right? So we need to protect the brand at all costs. So realize that this is my advice to potential franchise owners, that when a franchisor has you do something, it's to the benefit of you, right? It's the benefit of this system as a whole. You may not like it, may not agree with it 100%, but just realize all the decisions that are being made are not kind of haphazardly made, right? They're made based on how they're going to affect the entire system. Because any decision we make, to your point, if we decide we're going to sell lottery tickets, right? How does that affect the entire system if we're going to do that? How does that work? What does the training look like around it? There's a lot of factors that go into rolling any particular thing out. For example, we just launched with Mosquito Squad, our full service pest control. When we first started as a brand 20 years ago, we were just mosquito, right? And so with that comes, some problems. There's some seasonality, right? Mosquitoes go away, so does your business, right? So, so we had to adapt and evolve over time to include that. Whereas today we're full service, and so we changed the name. It doesn't say it on your screen now, but it will be. It's on our website if you go there. It says Mosquito Squad, and then it says Plus, right? It just added a plus to it, and that kind of lets people know that, that we're not just Mosquito when we perform those services. So, we've added those things over time, but it didn't happen overnight, right? Like I said, there's training that need to happen with all of our owners to kind of bring in those other lines of service, licensing that might be required for those additional lines of services, right? And so that's the franchisor side, what their highest goal is. Then the highest goal of the franchisee is to form those systems and processes to the best of their ability, right? Do it to the best that you can, to the letter of the law, because that's going to improve your chance of success. And that's why there's two sides of the coin, right? There's somebody that's too entrepreneurial, right? That Steve Jobs would not make a good franchisee ever, right? He'd be the worst franchisee because he would just want to come in and change everything, right? Break stuff, right? Like they say. The other side of the coin, the greatest, I think, franchisees are ex-military because they're used to following systems and processes, right? That's what they're trained to do. So when they come in, it's like they don't even skip a beat, right? They're like, yep, that's what I'm going to do, right? So, I think there's goals for both sides, and as long as both parties, fulfill their end of the bargain, that improves success for everybody.
So take me through, you've been in franchising a long time, plus you own your own business. What's that you mind sharing? What's a big fumble or something that you maybe, a hard lesson you had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, I would probably say finding the right manager for the business because, I was semi-absentee. I was involved in the beginning to get it off the ground for like the first 6 months. But then I hired a manager and I went through so many finding the right person because it's crucial, right? You're handing your baby over that you invested into to this person that most likely you don't know, right? If you're lucky enough to have someone that's a family member or friend or someone that you've known before they can hand a business to, that has its pros and cons too, by the way. But yeah, most likely you're not going to know that person, right? You're going to go the new broom sweeps clean, as you said, right? You don't know all the things that they're going to come along with, and by the time that you do, it's kind of too late, and they've done damage to your business. Hopefully not irreparable damage, right? So thankfully, knock on wood, that wasn't irreparable damage, but it caused a lot of heartache and frustration. Yeah,
that was the same. I would say if you asked me the same question, I invented a bicycle storage rack that went from floor to ceiling, patented it. When I first invented it, people told me it would never sell. People would say, well, why would someone buy a $200 oak or aluminum bike rack when they can spend 99 cents and get a hook? And I'm like, well, why would someone, use Mosquito Squad when they can put a candle out in their backyard, right? They're not the same things, right? And so I grew my business up, and the first year I made $1 million. I came from the project's 9th grade education, and I was all excited. And I went to my accountant and I said, hey, I'm a millionaire. I sold $1 million. And she just laughed and said, hold on there, Skippy. You sold $1 million. You're $150,000 in debt. And you took home $15,000. And she said, well, have you been looking at your balance sheet and income statement? And I said, what's that? And she said, well, do you have a chart of accounts? I said, I don't know. And so, even though I was generating a lot of revenue, and I had managers in place that, certainly did my accounting, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but I had to really understand the strengths of an effective, I had to understand culture, leadership, management, team building, communication, and change. So there were 6 modalities that I had to learn. Now I always recommend people hire their weaknesses. Now I'm definitely, if you said delivering the product or service, marketing, sales, or operations, which bucket do I fall into? I'm 100% in the marketing and sales and delivering whatever the product is. So whatever the product or service is, I'm always passionate about. I always want to aim for high quality. I'm never the cheapest. I learned a long time ago, it's just as easy to sell a high-end product as it is a low-end product. So why not sell the high-end product? I learned that you don't go broke making a profit. You can't make it up on volume if you're losing money. I mean, I've tried that. And so I had to learn how to hire my weaknesses, but I also had to get educated and have my own success library to understand what a chart of accounts was, what a balance sheet, what income statements were, what key performance indicators were, what the net promoter score was for customer satisfaction. I had to learn all these things. So if you're listening to this episode, you can Google any of those terms or go to ChatGPT and say, what the hell was Ford talking about?
Yeah.
But I had to learn that where my strength and my weaknesses were, because I had to hire really good managers, and it was really hard in the beginning because I grew the company up bootstrapped to turn over the reins and actually hired a CEO to run the business, because I could go out and create relationships and generate deals, but I would lose it on the back end. And so, and the same thing that happens in franchising. They might be really great in operations, but they're going to have to hunt and farm. They're going to have to hire someone that's going to go out there and develop new relationships. And then those are going to nurture the ones you currently have.
Right. 100% agree. And, I would just add to that, one of the problems that you got to be careful to not overcompensate. So what I mean by that is you got a bad manager, figure out you have a bad manager, and you don't want to make that mistake again, and make sure you have the right person. You don't want to be so involved in the business that you wind up micromanaging that manager.
That happens easy.
Right. You can get overly aggressive and go, okay, I'm not making that mistake again. I'm going to watch every single penny and be on top of every single KPI that happens in the business. So I find that what works for me and what I've done with my businesses is I'll have a regularly scheduled weekly meeting with my manager at least once a week, where we just go through the data, right? We're making data-driven decisions, and it's very calculated and cold, right? There's no feelings involved, right? The numbers are what they are. And so then we start ideating about ways to improve those numbers, right? And so we use strategy, and that's where it starts to be more tactical, right? But you got to have those hard data-driven decisions on a weekly basis with your manager. And I wasn't doing that in the beginning. I just kind of handed over the reins, and it was making money when I was there, right? So why wouldn't I make money with someone else there, right? So, one key data point that you kind of reminded me of is like cost per lead, right? Like you need to pay attention to that, right? Like how much are you spending to acquire that one customer? Is it too much? Is it not enough? And so for like Mosquito Squad, there's a lot of marketing involved in what we do. It's a very competitive space. And so we spend a lot of money on marketing to kind of get the word out and fight that market competition, get that market share. And so we had to make sure that, it's going to cost us a lot up front to get that customer, but we have a contract-driven business, right? They're not buying just that, like to your point, like buying that widget, buying that bike rack, right? They're buying from us every single year, right? They're resubscribing to the service we provide. So if it costs us a little bit in the beginning, no big deal, right? Because we're going to make up for that for all the years that they, stay on as a customer.
Yeah. So my success formula, it's called the accelerated growth system, and it starts with mindset and strategy and tactics. But one of the areas in there, one of the modules, is all about the success formula, which is, what's it cost you to reach your leads? What's your conversion rate percentage? What's your profit on the first sale? And what's the long-term value? Now, the great thing about your brands is they're subscription-based models and reoccurring revenue. So that obviously any business that does that does extremely well. That's why all the AI tools are subscription-based. All the entertainment services are all subscription-based. And there's great books on the subscription economy, but you can still add subscription-based to any business if you try. But going back to that cost to acquire a lead, I'll ask audiences, I'll say, who can tell me what their cost to acquire a lead is? And, I recommend no matter what the campaign is, you should be tracking those 4 variables. So for example, I just got done visiting the home show here in my city, and there was a couple of your brands there. Won't name which ones, but they were there from Authority Brands. And it's interesting because I have a 5-bedroom house, I have a lake, I have a home office here. I'm looking outside right now, and we spend a lot of time in our yard. And I've been wanting to get some type of a service that would, allow us to be out more outside with less bugs. Obviously, I know there's still going to be some, but cut it down. And so I would network with all the people in the trade show booths as I went from booth to booth, and there was probably 5 different companies selling mosquito type services. There was the chuck in a truck guy who just, has a van and wants to go out and he bought the equipment. And then there was the full service franchise brands. None of them have called me back. It's been 2 weeks from the show. I filled out their lead cards, dropped my business card, said, hey, not one of those companies has rung my cell phone, sent me an email. And I just have to think because as a marketer, it's like shameful, right? I mean, I have on my websites, if you fill out a contact form at Profit Rich Results or my agency, primeconcepts.com, the message goes to my team, but it also does email to text, and it sends me a text message. So I'll get a text message saying, Jason from Mosquito Squad is interested in a keynote in August. Well, I don't care what time of day it is. If you filled out that form, I'm calling you right now. And so
Right.
it happened, it was late on a Friday evening. I'm watching TV with my wife. It was like 11 o'clock. And my phone rings and it's a person with an inquiry out of Chicago. And I'm thinking, okay, same time zone. And I start, she says, who are you calling at, 11 something at night? I said, I'm calling this lead. And so I called and they didn't answer the first time. So I called back a second time because, people will do that if they screen there, because she didn't know what my phone number was. And so she answers the phone and she says, hello. And I said, Sandy, what are you doing up on a Friday night looking for speakers? And she says, who the hell is this? And I said, this is Ford Saeks, your next keynote speaker. My website's profitrichresults.com. Get off your phone, go enjoy your weekend. Now, she chuckled. Yeah. But I made a big impression because I responded quickly. And then on Monday, when we got to the Zoom call we were on with her executive committee deciding on speakers, she said, you called back so quick. And I said, well, I understand the microwave economy that we're in, and people want instant gratification. They want to know right now. And I said, I knew I wasn't going to try to sell you on a Friday night, but I wanted to make sure you knew that I cared and it was important. She said, you're the kind of speaker we want. Now, was it worth doing that? I mean, certainly. Now, I could have waited till Monday and sent her an email or left her a voicemail. I saw you reached out. So to me, the speed to responding, and I know franchisees say, yes, but I'm on the job. I don't have time. Well, setting up systems where you can at least get back to them and say, thank you for your inquiry. I must be out on a job right now. I'll make sure just the give a poop factor. It's my show, so I can say shit. I would never say that for those meeting planners. I would never say that in a keynote, so just let that go. But they have to give a poop factor, because a lot of times that's the difference. And so when you look at an organization, I have the mystery shop. So while they're at the show, at the trade show, I'll say, everybody go fill out your contact form, put somebody else's name in it, and tell me how long it takes before someone gets back to you. And, sometimes they'll do like a book signing, or they'll do an exhibitor expo or something. And people be coming up to me the whole show. I filled out this form 2 days ago. No one even called it, or on Friday, and it's Sunday and no one's even responded yet. And I'm like, look, you can learn a lot of strategy and tactics, but you still have to execute the fundamentals.
Right. Absolutely. 100% agree. Because, like you said, this home show, right? They can't just show up. They got to pay for that booth, right? It costs money to go and market. There's pre-marketing done in advance to say, hey, come see us, all that stuff, right? There's costs associated with doing that. So if you're not following up with those leads, you're wasting those marketing dollars, right? And so, it just baffles me that someone would do that. And so, that's why we have things like with Monster Tree and Mosquito Squad, we have call centers that if you can't get to the phone, right? Obviously, the first line of defense is someone on your team. As an owner, you want to pick up the phone, and that's the best way to do it, right? That we advise. But we get it. Sometimes you're busy or on the line with some other customer. And so we wanted to roll over and have some live voice picking up, because guess what? They're not leaving a voicemail, right? That potential customer you wasted that marketing dollar, because they're just going to call the next person that does pick up the phone, right? So we have those things in place because we realize, that's super important as well. And to your point, I love the story, that anecdote with Colin. I don't know if I would be able to do that with my wife. She'd probably get a little mad at me if I'm calling doing business over our time together. But I like the story basically is saying that you made that connection early on with that customer, and as they say, right, people make evaluate or think about a business with their head, but they buy with their heart, right? They buy with emotion, right? So you made that emotional connection from the very beginning, and that's probably what puts you heads and tails above anybody else that they were looking at.
And I think too, there's a couple good takeaways for our listeners that are still here in the episode. One is, if you're having family time, focus on the family. Like I'm not trying to act like you should be glued to your phone waiting for the contacts to come in. But my wife's an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur, and so entrepreneurs understand that you're. It's not like a 9 to 5. I mean, you're on. Now that doesn't mean you don't have life balance and things in your life, but responding to those leads are so essential in any business. And then so I always ask people, map out your customer journey and look at all the touch points you have with your customer along the way. And ask yourself, where could I improve it? And when that comes to technology, I'm doing a lot of speaking right now on AI, and every conference I go to, there's 2 or 3 speakers, and most of them are highly educated but boring, and they're telling you the theory behind the technology. And as a business owner,
Right.
it would put me into a coma. I'd record it and play it at night in the hotel as a cure for insomnia because it's so bad.
Yeah.
I didn't mention any names, but I'm just saying. So my view of AI is looking through the lens of business. How is it going to help me expand my influence, make better decisions, like you said, data-driven analysis, and then also, just automate processes. And so it was interesting because, people say, well, do you think AI is going to replace people? And I say, AI is going to replace people, but more importantly, it's going to replace people not using AI. I said, you cannot get away from it now. The genie's out of the bottle. You need to embrace it. So I wrote this book called AI Mind Shift. It's over the corner of my shoulder here. But it's a book that is used for a quick read that helps people understand the impact it's going to make and how they can navigate, but more importantly, keep the human touch. And so it's just like I've said this many times on my show, when automated attendants came by, and you just mentioned it too, press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish,
Right.
press 3 for sales. People hate getting those phone trees because it used to be when they first came out, oh, it's going to save me time. I don't have to have a real person answering the phone. But now if you actually have a real person, it's amazing. And so AI has its place, but by no means am I an advocate for replacing the human experience. And I think that as AI accelerates and there's new cultures and new generations as we're going into now, I think that human connection is going to be even more important. And you mentioned in the beginning of the episode that, Mosquito Quad is, and Monster Tree Service, it's recession proof in the sense of not only recession proof, but AI proof because it involves people. Now, certainly you can have there's robotic mowing and things, but we're a few decades away at least from, our dome over our house that, has the perfect temperature and kills all the mosquitoes. But what closing thoughts would you have for our listeners today?
Yeah, no, it's been a great conversation, and again, I appreciate you having me here. And I would just say, when evaluating a franchise, whether it's us, Monster Tree or Mosquito Squad, my advice is always, make sure that you connect with the brand. Right? Is this something that you can see yourself doing day to day? Right? It's at the end of the day, money's great and everything, right? Like you want to make sure that it's profitable. That's definitely important, but it's not everything, right? You and I have probably worked for many people that we hated it. We made a lot of money, but we hated what we did, right? Every single day, waking up going, oh my goodness, I don't want to do this, right? So it's not always it's not the number one motivator in my opinion. So, make sure that whatever you choose, it's something you can find a connection to. You don't have to be in love with it, right? But at least something you can see yourself doing and managing a crew of people performing those services. And then, all the rest is like kind of standard stuff that you would want to do with any franchisor. Like I talked about, make sure they have the table stakes, the systems, the software, the service, the support team. Any kind of data you can find, like franchise business review, right? That gives like independent surveys with the owners to see the franchisee satisfaction. Those things are great, right? Those are great resources to kind of get an idea. Entrepreneur ratings, right? Some of that is you can take it or leave it.
Right, yeah.
But
some of it's hypothetical.
Yeah.
Not the Grammys,
yeah,
everybody,
exactly.
but I get it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I wouldn't value it 100%, but make sure when you're having those conversations with folks like me, you're asking those questions that relate around like item 20, which is like, what kind of closure rate are you having, success and failure rate, performance data like item 19. And then of course, like I said, the systems and tools and things that are, like I said, table stakes for any good franchisor.
No, I think it's great. In my business, I try to keep it simple, and I have 3 basic buckets or areas of my circle of my pie, which is happy clients. Obviously, if I don't take care of the customer, I don't have a business. Happy bank account. If I'm not making money, then it doesn't matter. And happy team. And I have found that I use that on onboarding with my team and my clients is when I focus on those, I'm successful. You can focus on profits, but if you don't take care of your customer, your team, you're going to have high turnover in both areas. If you focus on just taking care of the customer with no regard for profitability, then you're going to give away the farm and you're not going to know why you're not making money. And if you just take care of your team, you might create situations where they become codependent And I always want to coach people up to a certain standard and let them do the work. And I had to learn, a leadership method called this situational leadership, which was treating the task, the leadership first on the task and the person, not the person. Because some like every employee, there's some things you can delegate to, and there's other things the same employee you have to spend more time on. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to take it, case, but it have to be fluid, right?
Right.
You have to be super fluid with with everything. I think when you're talking to a candidate, it's not a one size fits all, right? Everybody's got different goals and aspirations and earnings expectations, and all these things make a difference. And same thing with your employees, right? They have different needs. And so, if I can be a mentor, I love that, right? I love paying it forward because God knows I had a lot of help along the way. No man's an island, as they say, right? I had a lot of people helping me. So I love to pay it forward, whether it's within my organization and authority brands or just candidates. I have told many candidates, believe this or not, Ford, they've said, I don't, it's not a good fit for me, right? Or we've determined together it's not a good fit. And I've said, hey, listen, at the end of the day, I want you to choose what is the best thing for you. And I've got a lot of experience in franchising. And if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email, happy to assist and give you guidance, right? I want you to do what's right for you. And they do that, right? They tap into that resource, those resources that I have. And I have no problem doing it because, I don't know. I just feel like that's an important part of what we do in franchising is that we're helping people become small business owners, become entrepreneurs. And it's just a good feeling, right? Giving is the best feeling. I'd always rather give than receive.
Well, I've my mentor, Nino Cobain, always said, give without remembering, receive without forgetting. And Jason, thank you so much for giving and being a mentor and paying it forward on today's episode.
Thank you, Ford.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.